Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about disability. I'm Dr. Suresh Padadmat, Professor of Psychiatry, Head of Telemedicine Center, Head of Forensic Psychiatry Unit working at NIMANS, Bangalore. Today we are going to discuss about the concept of disability, various definitions of disability, and how the model of disability has been proposed. And finally, we will discuss how United Nations Convention on Right to Persons with Disability has defined disability. Let's start from the beginning. Historically, the people with disability were being considered as invalid. They were synonymous to inability rather than ability. Hence, they were not considered as normal. They have been part of a charity. They were not being given their due rights. But however, disability is part of human condition and it is there since the day human has born on this earth. So, disability is part and parcel of our life. Almost everyone will be temporarily or permanently impaired at some point in time of life. Those who survive old age will experience increasing difficulties in functioning as they get aged. Even World Health Organization report, which was published in 2011, said that 40 to 46% of persons with disability is seen above the age of 60 years. So, please do remember, disability is part and parcel of our life. Let's understand what are the different definitions of disability. The first, World Health Organization tried to define disability in 1980 by various definitions. It was the first attempt which was been tried. It tried to define disability in terms of impairment, handicap, and disability itself. These definitions were very confusing. But however, let's look into this first attempt. The impairment is defined as any loss or abnormality. There are 2 points. Any loss or abnormality of psychological, physiological, or anatomical structure or functioning. So, they have brought 2 concepts. One is any loss or abnormality. That is one. Second one is it may be psychological, physiological, or anatomical structure or functioning. So, this causes impairment. So, what is impairment in general words? For example, you can see loss of a limb is an anatomical structure loss. Similarly, mental illness can be considered as an abnormality of psychological well-being. So this is how the impairment was defined. Further, disability was also defined in this international classification of impairments, disability, handicap by WHO during 1980. Disability means any restriction or lack that is resulting from an impairment actually of ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for human being. See, it's very complicated definition, but however, it says any restriction or lack of ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for human being. So the issue of normalcy becomes very difficult. But however, taking the concept from impairment, now we have to understand disability. We understood impairment. Now we will take one step forward by understanding through the example. In the first, we saw in the example is loss of a limb. That is the impairment. Now the disability is unable to walk around. The one more is mental illness was taken as a psychological abnormality. But however, here, unable to think, behave, or else having emotions which can be expressed or understood from the other people. So that is the disability has been considered. But here the realm of society comes in by understanding the range of behavior or within the what is so-called normal human being. So this normalcy has created more havoc over a period of time. But however, understanding impairment and disability, the last another definition was put forward was handicap. Handicap means a disadvantage for a given individual that limits or prevents the fulfillment of a role that is normal. Again, normal has been brought in here. If you consider in 1980, it was considered as handicap certificate. Here, the concept of society has been brought in. Example, in the first impairment, we talked about loss of limb. We talked about disability is unable to walk around. The handicap means unable to contribute to the society by becoming mobile, either in the form of a teacher going to the school, going to the first floor and teaching the students, or becoming a driver and contributing to society. So that's where the handicap comes in. Similarly, if you take the impairment as mental illness, disability as the having impairment which resulted in inability to feel, think, and also express emotion. In that, he is unable to contribute to the society of being a normal human and able to help others. So these were the three definitions which comprehensively addressed a disability. Unfortunately, these definitions considered as very complicated. Many policymakers could not comprehend. Even medical fraternity was finding it difficult. But however, the society also did not support this view. Hence, there was a social movement which picked up. I'll come to that slightly later. But in 1980, this was the definition proposed, which lasted for more than 1 to 2 decades. But in 2001, there was a landmark definition change occurred. American Medical Association in 2001 clearly mentioned that an alteration of an individual's capacity to meet personal, social, occupational demand because of impairment. See, the concept has been beautifully brought here. The individual capacity to meet the three important functions they talks about: personal, social, and occupational demand. See, personal, we know that I'm unable to fulfill because of loss of my limb as an impairment, but it also decreases my occupational ability. Socially, I'll be considered as not complete. And of course, I may not be able to get the job. Here, the individual's capacity was the word which gave a lot of meaning and also brought in the legal term under the American Medical Association. At the same time, World Health Organization in 2001 tried to define again through international classification of impairment, disability, and handicap. In this, disability as an umbrella term for impairment, activity limitations, or participation restrictions. So here they brought in a disability as a main term, which is an umbrella where the impairment, activity limitations, or participation restriction, conceiving a person's functioning and disability as a dynamic interaction between the health condition. Health conditions are here disease, disorders, injuries, trauma, or other health conditions, and contextual factors, including the social, attitudinal, physical, environmental, and personal attributes. So this, the WHO tried to make a very comprehensive definition, but unfortunately, again, they created a more difficult definition. To summarize, the definition of disability cannot suffix across all possible factors. Hence, the definition of disability is not accepted as a single definition by everyone. Across nation, across countries, across various law, the definition of disability varies. But however, there are two important attributes of the definition of disability is common across all definition. They are basically two important factors: a physical or mental characteristics labeled or perceived as an impairment or a dysfunction. See, they brought in a very beautifully a mental or a physical characteristic which are labeled by the medical or perceived by the society as an impairment or a dysfunction. So that's one. Second, some personal or social limitation associated with the impairment. There is an impairment which is maybe physical or it may be mental, which may be either labeled or perceived. That is A. B, Because of this impairment, there is a limitation both personally and socially. So these two attributes were considered as very important for the definition of disability. Considering these two, United Nations Convention on Right to Persons with Disability came up with a paradigm shift. The shift is, it said, disability is a human rights issue. Why so? The reason the UNCRPD considered disability is a complex, not a simple phenomenon, it is a complex. It's dynamic in nature, multidimensional, and evolving concept. They accepted it. They accepted the conflict. They accepted that it is very difficult to define. And further, they made a very sweeping statement along with bringing in a paradigm shift in the understanding of definition of disability. Disability results from the interaction between the person's impairment and attitudinal and environmental barrier that hinders the full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So this is one of the best and the beautiful definition which United Nations Convention on Right to Persons with Disability brought in. The crux of the matter is the disability results from the interaction between the impairment and attitudinal and environmental barrier. We know about the environmental barrier. For example, a person is unable to go to the hospital. The reason being is the hospital is situated on the third floor and there are no ramps or the lift. This person finds it difficult to reach the third floor to go to a government hospital. That is environmental barrier. Since there is no ramp, there is no lift. He requires help. He requires support. So that's the situation, what we call it as physical barrier or environmental barrier. The other issue comes as environmental barrier. The environmental barrier is easy to remove, but the attitudinal barrier is very difficult. Even though there is a lift, or else even there is a ramp, even the wheelchair. But the doctor who is there in the third floor feels that disabled people should not be treated because they are not complete. They are not fit to be in our normal human race. If that is the attitude, imagine what will he treat? Will he help the persons with disability? That attitudinal barrier is one of the biggest challenge which was understood by the UNCRPD. And the whole United Convention on Right to Persons with Disability revolves around this concept of attitudinal and environmental barrier which the society needs to address. Without that, any amount of support, it may be financial support, improving the environmental barriers, unless there is an attitudinal change occurs, the persons with disability will continue to face stigma and discrimination in the society. So, what does the Rights of Persons with Disability Act of India defines disability? It clearly defined in section 2S. Persons with disability means a person with long-term, they are very specific, long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairment. See, there are 4 impairments they brought in: physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairment, which in interaction with the barriers hinders his full and effective participation in society equal with others. Others is basically normal people. That's the way they removed the concept of normal here. They called it as with others. So again, it's the long term is not defined. It is left to the assessing person and how the individual disability is looked upon. At the same time, the barriers have not been defined. Yes, it has been defined in another definition called 2C. Here, barriers means communicational, cultural, economic, environmental, institutional, political, social, attitudinal, or structural factors. There are n number of barriers which have been placed in front of a person with disability. How will he be able to equally participate with you? When the level of playing is unequal, how will he be able to play? You have put the person with disability in the lowest pedestal and you are telling, come, now we are equal. That is not the way the Constitution of India functions. First, we have to make them equal. Opportunity has to be given. then only we will be considered as equal. Otherwise, they are in an unequal pedestal. So this definition was very comprehensive under the Rights of Persons with Disability Act of 2016, which is in line with the UNCRPD, which was vetted by our parliament. Let's understand with this background, what are the models of disability which has evolved over a period of time. First and the foremost, the medical model of disability was very popular. The simple reason is the disability being a medical disease or a disorder or a trauma which occurred subsequently after birth or any other health condition. Hence, it was considered as a medical model. This model links the disability diagnosis directly with the individual's physical body, and it focuses on treating, managing, curing illness or disability. So the whole issue focuses on this person is not complete. He has problem. He is not too fit to be in the society. He is abnormal. He is not a normal. That is the concept the medical model of disability talks about. But the drawback of medical model does not considers various issue. It does not considers individual problem, and hence he should strive to overcome the disability. That means here the disability means it is his physical problem and he needs to overcome it. And he needs to overcome through the guiding force of the doctor. That means the doctor is the god here. He will guide you and he knows the best for you. This paternalistic attitude was the major basis of criticism for the medical model of disability. Here, there is no role of society. The society will say we are allied, disabled people are at the receiving end, and your body is not right, your mental balance is imbalanced, you need to take treatment. And the doctor is the best person who will decide for you. This was criticized very badly. But at the same time, one more step was taken and a rehabilitation model of disability was brought in. This is also similar to the medical model of disability. And again, it says that you have to overcome your disability by rehabilitation purpose. And often perceived as having failed if they do not overcome the disability. That is the major drawback. The drawback, it says you did not overcome your disability through rehabilitation. That means you did not put enough of effort to overcome yourself, the problem. So the problem lies within and the society will not do anything. The society will not improve the barrier. The society will not consider any kind of reasonable accommodation. It is you have to accommodate or fulfill the demand of the society. That's what the social welfare society was thought of at that time. This was not accepted by many people. Hence, the social model of disability was brought in. You can look at the figure. The problem is the disabled world or disabling world. Here, in this world, we have built our buildings according to our wish. We have never considered disabled people also human being. So we built according to your way or liking, and we did not consider to accommodate them. There is no stairs for the ramps, no special schools, no sign languages, discrimination everywhere, inaccessibility and no parking place for persons with disability, isolated families. They said that he is a disabled person, remove him from the society, put him in a hostel, and no job prospectus. And that clearly said that social model clearly says oppression and exclusion of people with disability is the norm. And this is how the society is running, and it has been organized for normal people, not for persons with disability. So that social model brought in a lot of revolution in thinking. Here, the social momentum clearly said that problem is not within the person with the disability, but in the environment or in the society where he stays. That fails to accommodate the persons with disability. That's the important crux of social momentum. And persons with disability are unnecessarily isolated, excluded from full participation in society. Just because the normal people have a negative attitude with the society. The negative attitude of the society with regard to person with disability. This social momentum clearly disregarded the medical model and said it is the society which has to change, not the person with disability. But however, the drawback of this model, the state started withdrawing okay, if this is not a medical disease or an impairment, so we are not going to do any primary prevention. We are not going to do any early diagnosis and treatment or rehabilitation. You change the society. No medical treatment will be given to the disability. This important point made a difference in the definition of social model. But however, the other important model came in, biopsychosocial model. This clearly said disability has been arising from a combination of factors of physical, emotional, and environmental. That clearly accepted it is a multiple factors involved, and it is very complex in nature. That's what the biopsychosocial model said, and it has been accepted very well for some time. But however, the era changed. In 2006, United Nations brought in a very important paradigm shift. It said disability is a human right issue. Because of stigma, discrimination, and exclusion, the inequalities which was pushed to the person with disability, they were denied of autonomy and opportunity. Violence and torture was the norm, and they were abused. Access to justice, health, education, and social welfare measure was distinct for a person with disability. They had to fight for every step with the normal people. First of all, they are disabled, and next they have to fight for every resources with the normal people. Then it is not a social welfare society. Hence, United Nations said it is a human right issue. It is no more a medical or social. It is a multiple factorial. That was an important paradigm shift which occurred from charity to human rights issue. So, UNCRPD was adopted on 13 December 2006 in New York. Signature was opened on 30th March 2007. India signed it on 1st of October 2007, considering disability is a human right issue and it needs to be addressed by the state. And people with disability should not be considered as objects to be managed. They are the subject deserving equal respect and enjoyment of a human rights. That means they are equal to any normal person, and equal opportunity and equal level field should be given to persons with disability. That was an important paradigm shift which has occurred once the UNCRPD was signed. Hence, we had to align our local law. A new law was drafted, that is Right to Persons with Disability Act of 2016. With this, we moved from charity to human rights issue. That means social welfare for the disabled is not a charity, but the rights they are entitled to. See, this you have to understand. It's not the state which is going to give, okay, I will give you pension. No, it's not a charity. It's a right. They are deserved and they are entitled to under the Constitution of India. Hence, it is titled as Rights of Persons with Disability Act of 2016. Further, just because a man is blind doesn't mean that he lacks vision. You can say that he is blind, but he has a vision for himself, for the society, for the country. That needs to be respected. He is a human being. That human rights needs to be upheld. And my dear friends, to conclude, stop focusing on this part of the disability. Start focusing on their ability. You will start a new way of understanding persons with disability. Thank you very much for giving your valuable time. Stay safe.